We'll see.
Oh, and we're on the wrong picture again. There we go. Hi.
Hello.
It's Tuesday. I have to have something wrong.
It is Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. What a day.
It's been one.
I don't know where it went. It was like dragging, and then it was
boom. Here we are.
Here we are. Yes.
Yep.
There's something about staring in front of the computer that either makes a day go by super quick or super fast, or super slow. All of those things. I'm just seeing if you're paying attention.
Okay.
Oh, wow. We have lots to talk about today. If you're joining in, you may already know about the Perfectly Pieced, which is the new Me Time program from Kimberbell.
Give me one of each of those.
We have decided to sort of embellish on it a little bit, right?
Compliment it,
yeah.
and thanks.
And
add to and work with.
We have to make sure that we complicate it a little bit.
Well, yeah. So yeah. So we're just we're complimenting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna go with that. But yeah, it's a. I think it's going to be. I mean, we're in month one.
We're in month one, so
you know we'll see how it goes.
But, if it blows up in our face next month, I'm really hoping the block isn't going to be too complicated.
So long story short, as we're rambling here,
yeah.
We took the fabrics that were in the box because we got the box, and we made a complementary coordinating. So we took and we
duplicated it with fabrics that
we took fabrics from our selections, and we curated a collection of our own.
Customly curated.
It is custom curated by SnL. So, and it really is. We both pitched in and got a little bits here and little bits there. So we have a set that goes with what was in the box. So if you are looking and like, okay, I really like this and I want to do it, but I don't have enough fabric, how can I get more that will be able to make a larger something? Yeah. We have some bundles that will very well, I think, go with what's in there and expand upon the projects so that you can make more blocks to, or larger, depending upon whatever it is that you're doing. And so you can have a larger project. Or if you just kind of go, all right, somebody pick out fabrics for me. We also put together some Christmas fabrics, and Sarah did that one pretty much. We got some new stuff in just
before,
like literally just before. So it's very fresh and new. You probably won't have seen that fabric anywhere, which is also fun. And so she's got a block put together from that bundle. So that is bundle number 2 option. So both the bundles are the same amount of money, and they're both the same amount of fabric. So it's a nice add-on, or
yeah, maybe you're just getting the digital version and you are looking for some different fabrics, or these are very so far all of these months,
all of the months
so
of
far,
one so far.
Yeah, it's been very fat quarter friendly. So you know, a lot of us have stash of fabric pieces and things like that in our collection of stuff. But the thing that I noticed, if you were making the bigger block, is that you really did need you needed quite a large chunk of one of the main fabrics in there because of how you're piecing it. It needs to be pretty large. So that would be the one that you might be maybe having trouble pulling out of
Be a
your,
little low on.
yeah, depending on how you're doing it from your stash. And so I did a sewing pattern as well, which uses a little bit less fabric or smaller pieces, not necessarily less fabric, but smaller pieces.
Right.
So if you just have like charm squares or stuff like that at home, it would work in there. So you could do some embroidery and you could do some piecing, and that would
Still
maybe
end up with
the blocks and the style. So you would have some choices. So for people who don't have an embroidery machine, it allows them to join in on the fun. But if you have an embroidery machine, it would also allow you to use maybe some different pieces of material.
Yep.
Or what I noticed, like if you do the large block, you do have some really good chunks of fabric left over, but not quite enough to make
another square
in the hoop. But you could maybe
make a sewing block.
Okay. Yeah. So there's some fun things that you can do with the scraps. Of course, you can just save your scraps until next month and maybe they'll fit.
But from the little blip of the mood board that we've seen, the colors aren't going to be the same.
Right.
Of course. So, they're not going to give you the same fabrics every month, which is the fun part.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, except in that everything's not going to match. So this is not somebody asked, is this like a block of the month where, you're going to get a block and you make that block and the next month you're going to get, and you put it all together and you have a quilt? I mean, technically, yes, you could do that, but it's not going to match.
Right,
So it's not going to all coordinate and make something at the end of that, though you could do that if you don't care.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you could have a very eclectic piece, which might be a lot of fun.
Right.
It'll depend on what we end up getting, whether that will turn out to be like, yay, or maybe not so much.
And I don't think we had really thought about it as a continuing project, but more as an individual monthly project.
Right.
So I don't know. We do have some Christmas fabric, so we may be able to continue along with it, like a Christmas theme or something, making sure that we've got one thing that sort of complements each month, so that if you did want to,
go that route.
Yeah, scrappy, but not
So,
necessarily.
from a picture perspective, she put together that nice email. I hit send, so that was my participation level. We've got the coordinating pack, and then we've got the Christmas pack that are such nice pieces. So got some fun stuff in here. Some of these match literally exactly what was in there, so we're just giving you more of what was in there, and then some coordinating pieces so that it's just going to blend nicely. So it will give you that extension bit that you would like.
Exactly.
So
and we thought we would do 2 blocks today. So one with pre-quilting on there and one not pre-quilted. It will be super hard for you to figure out which one is which, I'm sure.
Yeah, neither is difficult, but they are going to basically start off even a little bit differently. So if you are, hi Mom, if you are quilting, you'll start one way, and if you're not, you'll start another. So that's kind of you got to plan that ahead of time.
Yes, you will definitely have to
you
have.
want to know what you're doing before you start. So
And if you did the digital version, you will have electronic instructions.
Absolutely.
And if you did the mail box subscription, you will also have digital instructions, but you will
male versus female? Wait,
Yeah.
what? I was like, the mail, what?
the post office mail, like mail in your box.
I'm slow.
You will have some printed instructions, but if you looked at your electronic folder, there's a ton of information in there.
It really was.
They didn't print it all for you, but they did print the important part, which is the cutting instructions and your picture by picture, step by step part. So it's just a couple pages. It isn't the whole shebang.
Right. Because there was a lot of different project options, and so they gave you a lot of information, but of course, not knowing what part you would like to do, they didn't print all of that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So Sarah did all of the prep work today.
I did. So I think I have them in the machine, and I think I have them color sorted, though we shall see what happens.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
So we've got our fabrics all pressed and cut and all ready to go, because I worked so hard on that.
2 things to really pay attention when you're doing this. Start your fabrics, because it's really easy to stretch them and distort them when they're going in here, and really know what no-show mesh you're using, because even this one, it doesn't really like it if you get it wet and you hit it with an iron, it kind of goes. So it doesn't really shrink up, it just wrinkles. And then it kind of will flatten back up. But no-show meshes don't really like
that heat.
A hot iron right on top of them. So definitely know what stabilizer you're using. I did try a large block at home with heavyweight tearaway and it worked fine.
Okay.
You wouldn't use a tearaway if you were doing quilting in it because it wouldn't work real well trying to get that out of these little pieces. But I do think that when you get past like definitely for the 8-inch block, I didn't care for like how loose the block was with the no-show mesh in because it's just a large space because I didn't pre-quilt that one. So that one was just not so, but when I did it on the tearaway, it just pops out. So then my block laid nice and flat and I didn't have to worry about being careful about my iron and those types of things because it's a really large chunk of no-show mesh on the back. And of course, make sure you know whether or not it's fusible or not.
Yes, and if you have to use fusible, do we know which direction to put it in the hoop? So it's not necessarily you can't do it.
Right.
But if you have to use a fusible when no-show mesh, you want to make sure that the fusible is sitting up so that you are literally seeing the shiny part that you're working on. And that is so that after the fact, when you're pressing your seams and so on and so forth, that's not on your iron because it's really, really hard to work with that. You don't have any way to get to where you need to go if that's fusible is on the back. So that's all you can find and you really want to do this and you have to use a fusible, it's okay. You can do that, but make sure the fusible is up. So that shiny part is face up in your hoop. And that is what you're doing.
Yeah, and be careful when you're
pressing.
pressing.
And again, be careful when you're pressing your seams, but you can do it. It's just that is the direction you really want that to go if you have to do that.
Absolutely.
Better to do not, but if you have to.
If that's all you have.
If that's all you have.
Right. So those are my tips. Make sure you're not stretching your fabric because it's really easy to do that. It will distort it, and then even though it's in the hoop, it will still have a little bit of a little poof inside.
Little poofy. Yep. Absolutely.
Yep. So I starched these fabrics that will make sure that they don't shrink up later when you hit it with your iron or something like that. So definitely do that before you cut your pieces because if you do it afterwards, some of them will not be big enough. Okay.
Yep.
So shall we push the button?
We should push the button.
Do you want me to push your buttons?
Go for it.
All right.
Not your hair this time.
There's no purple in there?
There's no purple.
There's no funky in there?
How funky is your chicken? That's really funny that nobody else knew what that was.
I did not watch Buffy.
I mean, I think I knew it because of cheerleading, as much as I knew it from Buffy, but
sure,
that was just funny.
So our top design in the hoop is the one that does not have
quilting.
It doesn't have the batting in it, so it's not pre-quilted. It is just flip and sewed. We're just flipping it off.
Yeah. That's the bird up there.
And so it's kind of gonna map out your lines in here. This is gonna help make sure that you put your fabric pieces over top of the line that they're going on. Make sure that all of your pieces are covered. When we go down to the bottom here and it does that a little bit differently, it isn't gonna do that. That's kind of what I thought it was gonna do. Not really. Yep. So we're gonna just do this block.
That'll work.
So this is our first piece, and it's a weird piece. So it has to be quite wide. Every time I do this, I think, oh my God, this is huge for this little itty bitty corner.
So first piece, no matter what it is, what shape, where it's going, whatever, is always going to be pretty side up when you're doing any of these Doesn't matter what month we're in. It's always going to be pretty side up for that first piece. This one is on the corner, so we're pulling it out a little bit because we want to make sure that we've got plenty to round that corner as well. And we're also covering the stitched line so that we're making sure we're completely filling up the area that is
out here.
there. So you have your little map to follow that's stitched there. So you're covering up the complete triangle, but since it's also on an outside, we're also making sure we're completely overlapping the stitch seam allowance. So we're giving it plenty of room in there.
Yes.
All right, so once we have our fabric placed, it is then going to show us where to trim.
Yes.
And then place our next piece. So this is the really hard part.
It is super hard, but it can be a little bit confusing.
It
so
can.
especially if you aren't paying attention to your instructions and you're just looking at this piece over here, it can be a little bit confusing.
Absolutely. If this is the first time you've ever done this, it is very possible that you're going to look at this and go, I have no idea what I'm doing, right? Because the first time it's kind of
Especially if you try to follow it from what we're doing.
yeah.
So this is what happens when you put a non-quilted one and a quilted one in a hoop and you color sort it.
The colors don't completely match up
No,
because the colors that they use don't match.
right. But
So-
it's okay.
It's all right. We're going to be okay.
But we are going to trim that piece there. Do you
Yep.
want to
I
take over
can
the trimming
absolutely
duties?
do that.
I don't want to take that away from you.
Oh, well, yes, I must do something here. All right, so I'm going to just leave it right here. And I need to make, this is the spot that we're covering. So I'm removing everything on the inside of that line. And you're going to stop me if I'm doing something wrong, right?
Yes.
Because I haven't actually made this, and she's made it about 20 times now.
About that.
And also, I haven't read the instructions. So I'm just going based on all of the other pieces that I've done. So once I have that, I would then take my next piece, which I'm guessing is
That one. Yep, it's that
The red?
long red. Yes.
all right. So this is my next piece, and I am going to be doing an angled fold. So I'm going to now put, my first piece was pretty side up. This one happened to be a solid, which is kind of like a batik. It doesn't really matter which way we go there.
Exactly.
But this one needs to be pretty side down. And I'm actually going to turn this now so you guys can see, because this is where everybody screws up when I'm in class. What we want to do is line up. So here's that cut line. That is also my placement line. I'm literally going to evenly place and put that edges balanced, and I'm going to line it right up on that line there. So I don't need to be over. I don't need to add in a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I need to be right at that line. That's where I'm aiming for. Now, if
Yeah,
I'm
don't add any more. to
don't
the
add
seam.
more. It's going to do that for you. We're just going to completely line up with that edge. And I just turned it so you guys could see, because obviously it's away from the camera. So the next color is going to do a stitch line and tack that piece together.
And that becomes our seam and our seam allowance.
And it will build in your seam allowance for you, which is why you do not need to create one for yourself. The machine will do it for you. So we did plan a little bit ahead this time around, and it doesn't want to stay up there.
No, and it's not doing a very good job because it shouldn't be
There
doing.
should be batting right now too.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just skip that for the moment.
Yep.
Okay. You want to re-hit that, or do
I
you want
do.
me to fold that first?
I was gonna say fold it and then
Let me-
I'll hit it.
Yep. All right. So go back up to the beginning of that, and I will do this. Are we over here?
You are.
Okay. So you guys can see that stitch line up maybe a little bit better anyways. We've actually got an iron over here today, which is why I said we've planned a hair better than our normal piece. So I'm going to fold this up and just press so that I have a nice clean line there. If you do not have a mini iron, I'm sure it will come as a great surprise. We sell those here. If you do, this is a great opportunity. If you don't have one and don't have a plan to get one, our favorite tools for doing this are the fabric folding pen and then your seam roller. That would be basically a starch pen and then your seam roller.
So now we need to put the batting on the one below, the one that has the actual quilting on there. So what it's going to do now is it's going to go around 2 times so that we have our cut line, and then it's probably going to do maybe the lines that it did up here first. So
yep.
Yeah, this is going to be super easy for
confusing.
everyone to follow. So this would be the second step in the pre-quilted version, or the quilting as you go version.
This stop at least.
Yeah.
Different color. We could uncolor sort.
I could do that.
The top one.
Do you want me to do that?
Probably.
Okay.
It'll be less confusing for them to follow what we're doing, don't you think?
Probably.
But I will trim this and get it out of the way, and then. So I'm going to remove the excess batting here, and Sarah's actually going to uncolor sort for us and get us back to that stitch line up top. So, oops, sorry.
It's okay.
Didn't need that one, right?
Mm-mm.
All right, so the batting is now out of the way. Up on the top here, we are now going to stitch across here, if I'm guessing right. So we're going to go right across there, and that will be my trim line. Okay, so we're going to remove everything from the top of that line. And again, we don't need to save a seam allowance or anything. We're going to really trim right at that line, just like you would from an applique. And yeah, I'm guessing I'm doing pink.
Yes.
And now I'm going to, again, put the pretty side down, and I want to balance my edges on each side of that stitch line. So my excess fabric on each side, but the edge of that is going to go right on that stitch line. And I tack that in place. And this is going to fill that triangle right above it. So the convenient thing about doing it in the embroidery hoop is that we can just fill pieces as we go here, where when you're sewing, you can't quite go that route.
No.
So that's why you can't just do it like this when you're sewing, which we'll talk about a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little bit more like paper piecing or improv piecing if you were to sew your block like this.
All right, so we've got a few of those done. Now we're going to come over and do the opposite triangle on this side. So straight line there. Same pink.
Yep. And then there should be 2 for the other block, yeah.
Ding.
Ding, ding dong.
All right, so now we're going to remove everything to the right of that line. would be in
No,
there.
that's exactly what it'll give
Just-
you the spot to cut it off in a
We'll
minute.
cut that off later. So now I'm going to do this guy here. So I'm always laying my fabric on top of the fabric. So I'm not ever putting it on the stabilizer. I'm always laying it down on the fabric that I've already got. So that's another way that you can make sure that you're putting things in the right spot. Very common mistake is to put it on the wrong side so that it folds the wrong direction. So if you're always laying things on top of what you've already laid, then you'll be good to go.
Good.
Yep. All right, I'll press that one open real quick.
That was funny. There's a little bit of delay over there. All of a sudden, it was just open.
Ta-da's magic. Okay, so we now have basically that half. So now we need to do the long line to go all the way across.
Yeah, this is the biggest chunk you'll use.
The biggest chunk, yeah. So you guys, if you hung out with us and we did another block a couple of weeks ago, we didn't use an iron. Should have paid a little more attention to that one. Do you want me to redo that?
It's up to you.
I mean, I can pull a little bit later, but
We can pop those out if you want and then redo that. I mean, it's a good learning experience, right? So I'll put it on the screen.
So you noticed that I didn't hold that.
Right.
We were just
We didn't tape
yakking,
it.
and we've got a ripple. You can very clearly see
that.
in that,
Yeah.
which means that that is not going to lie flat. So as a quilter, that would drive you nuts in your piece.
Yeah,
so
and this one's not going to be quilted out.
it's not. So we definitely need to fix that, in my opinion. So we don't need to do the whole thing, just that top section up here. So I'm just snipping a few back. Is that far? Not quite far enough. How's that?
It's pretty good.
I'll put a piece of tape on it.
When you're using the batting underneath it, it doesn't slip around
It
as
doesn't
much.
shift as much.
And that's kind of like what we noticed when we were doing the largest blocks, because it's so hard to keep them really flat.
Everything nice and smooth.
You get a little bit of that lifting because there's a little give there.
So I just put a little bit of tape at the top to keep that nice and tight. I'm doing that because if I put my hands there, you won't be able to see anything. At home, I would just put my fingers in there. But
yeah, or if you had a stylus or something like that, that would be a good thing to do.
A stiletto would be great. And so now I'm going to remove the 2 points that are there. So I'm just going to trim. Oops, sorry. I'm just going to elbow you all day.
I think I totally have the machine in like a weird spot. I think it's usually over there.
It feels very
weird.
off.
Yes, I know. Yes.
Yes. Okay. I actually like this.
It's really pretty.
It's very pretty. So
Yeah.
now we've got a nice print. And again, these are the ones that came in the fabric in the box. So this is the longest piece. Make sure that you are balancing on the sides there. Don't have it too low or whatnot, because then you'll miss one of those points. So that is another common mistake that we see in a class when we're doing these, is not a balanced placement of that piece of fabric. It's easy to do.
Right. This is kind of like a Liberty of London knockoff fabric. And it's a knockoff because it's like traditional quilter's cotton, so it's a normal price fabric. It's a Riley Blake fabric. They're like the U.S. distributor of the real Liberty of London fabric too, which has such a nice
It has
feel
a really great
too.
feel to it, yeah, no
yeah,
doubt.
it really does.
No doubt. All right, so I'm going to press this one open.
Did he say heckle? Is that what he meant? I thought he said had cologne.
I thought it was cologne. Yeah, I had cologne. I'm like, okay, cool. Cologne's fun.
I'm like, why?
I
What
thought
did
it
you
was because
What did
we
you
were
eat for
funky.
lunch? I'm like, did he
Did
get it
he
on
get
the
it?
funky or
Right.
what? All right, so I've got that guy pressed open. So we just have that little corner piece left. So we just need one more line to tell us where to put this last piece, and of course where to cut the excess. Are you feeling left out? Okay.
Are you feeling
Are you
left
feeling
out?
left out?
You want to join us?
I'm okay.
You're okay? Are you sure?
I'll be the Statler and that'll be Waldorf.
Okay.
From the Muppets. Go heckle. What is the phenomenon? The real question is, who cares?
Mana. Do, 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 do. This is really nice fabric.
You're very much enjoying it, aren't you?
Mana. All right. So one last piece of fabric placement. Again, pretty side down. Cover up that stitch line and balance the edges to make sure that we get everything we need. I was afraid I unthreaded that. I was like, oh, that's got a pretty big loop there. All right. And I will press that open.
And I will fast forward.
And
No, it's going to do the
it's gonna
stitching
do a
on the
tack
outside. Yeah,
around, right?
I think so. Yes. It's not that squaring stitch yet.
So that iron is actually slightly bigger than the mini irons that we have available. All right, so last but not least, I gotta fix those shelves. I keep kicking them.
Taking them off.
Well, they've been off, they didn't get put back, and now I just keep kicking it.
That was a nice handoff.
Very good.
That was like an Olympic sport level there.
I know, man. Good pass, good pass.
Kathy Clark says, what iron are you using? Does Leabu sell them?
So actually, do you
Yes, Leabu
That
sells them.
particular one we don't have? Could you grab a mini? Thanks. Hayden's going to grab us what we have here so that you can see. And oh, Hayden's minion. He's so excited to say that. She's not even working, but she brought that for us. So actually, here, I can just put it right here. This is the mini iron that we have here in shop at the moment. So like I said, it's a little bit smaller than the one that I'm using at the moment, which I actually like this one better than the one that I'm using. This is
Yeah.
what I have at home.
And that's just what we had in the closet.
That's just what we had in the closet, exactly. It's actually not a very nice iron.
No,
So this one is way nicer. Again, no, I think that it has a steam option, but I don't put any water in it, and I do not recommend that
Yeah,
you do
don't
that.
do that.
It's only $23. It is on our website.
Should be.
It's been on our website, so unless something weird happened, it is still there. And so it is there and available. We've got a couple of them, so I highly recommend it. It makes this so much easier. I mean, the starch and roll thing is great, but this is so much faster, and it really is a better finishing tool. You don't get any stretching of the fabric with this, which if you didn't pre-starch, starching can
Yep.
then have that issue in the hoop if you didn't properly prep your fabrics.
That's right.
So the iron is definitely the way to go.
Yep. And so now we did that. Okay. So now we're caught up on the one that we started at the bottom. So the one at the bottom does have batting in it, and we would be on color number 3. So the first one was the batting placement line.
Then we covered that up.
The second one was the tack down and
Tacked
trim.
it down, and then I trimmed,
Yep.
and now here we are.
And now it's going
So-
to do that line drawing on there, so we know where all of our pieces are at. So someone joined us a little bit late, and she is asking why there is no batting under the one you are doing. Mindy, there is no reason why. We're basically just stitching out one of each so that you can get an idea of the different steps. So if I were making a king size version of this for my bed, I don't know that I would want to do the batting version because I still need to have it stitched together. So I still have to do some quilting to keep my 3 layers together. And actually, this type of block lends itself beautiful to just an overall quilting pattern.
Absolutely. So, you know, if you were going to have it quilted,
Yeah.
or if you have a long arm quilter, or even if you do it on your own machine, the top one without the batting, you would do your traditional sandwich and then quilt it.
Yeah.
So this is quilting as you go on the bottom. So that is the literally the reason that we're doing both is so that you guys can see. You get the options to do either when you are part of the program, and this is how you would do the stitch outs for either one.
Yeah, we just wanted to make sure that everybody was, and you know, different projects are going to lend themselves nicely to different pieces. They also give you the clear blue tile files, so if you did want to quilt this later using your embroidery machine in a more traditional sense.
Don't we need fabric?
Okay.
We're to fabric, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay. Wait. Okay. We're talking.
Yes.
Talking and working sometimes doesn't work. Team effort. Okay.
So you would
It's
most likely want, if you had some sort of a bed size quilt, probably do a traditional style quilting, and you might not. I think it would be fun to use collections of 4-inch and 8-inch blocks together.
absolutely. He can give you a lot more variation of what's happening. So you'd have
Exactly.
a lot more character and pizzazz on what's going on instead of just the same thing repeated.
Definitely.
And it would give you, you know, you could make patterns, you know, diagonals or, you know, whatnot's inside of that.
Yep.
So that top piece was purposefully put without batting so that it could be finished in a more traditional way.
Yes.
So this one here is intending to be finished literally once we're done here. That's why it's got the batting, and we will stitch the quilting design right on this block when we're done.
Yep.
So here is block 2. The first piece is, of course, pretty side up, just like we said before. Piece number 2 is going to be pretty side down, as are all of the pieces afterwards. I'm balancing my excess on either side and then tacking that in place. There we go.
And much of this is going to be exactly the same. The building of the block will be exactly the same. She's going to take it and she's going to press it over. And then we're going to add in the other pieces. That's basically all we have to do. And then when we get the block finished, it's going to do the quilting. So it will quilt around. And then we have some finished pieces to show you, some pre-quilted, some unquilted, some different layouts of the different pieces and parts. So we'll be able to share that with you.
Arm out of there. I'm not good at that. My hands just automatically go in. Can't do that.
And these all build pretty much the same. You're going to have a placement line and then a trim line, and you're going to just keep going from that part. So that was the trim line, which becomes the placement line for the next piece.
Again, make sure you're balancing. Don't scoot too far one side to the other. You always want to balance your excess on each side of that stitch so that you have a good clean fold and you don't miss the point or whatnot. It's a lot easier on a straight fold than on the angles, but it's good practice no matter where you're putting it.
Absolutely.
'Cause if you do it all the time, then you don't accidentally not do it on the angle.
True. And she's putting a little piece of tape this time just to make sure that
Preemptive strike.
little booger stays where it's supposed to.
All right. I saved it.
And this is the trim line, which becomes the placement line.
2 for 1.
It's a wonder
amazing
they
those
work.
phones work. Oh, Lord. It was funny that day mine evidently quit. That Kathy was using it and you
Yeah.
open it and there's loose
Little
parts,
parts.
floating around inside of it. That poop's getting a lot of love today, isn't
It
it?
is. I know.
Getting a little fresh over here. So sorry.
I should sit back here. Hey.
Sorry, I'll scooch
No,
over.
no. I mean, then you can't reach it. So, like I said, I obviously put the machine in a weird spot. It's all right. It's all good.
I'll tuck you in. I'll tuck you in.
We're all friends here.
Obviously, our boobs are too.
I saw a cute little saying yesterday on a coffee mug, and it said, "Our friendship isn't a big deal," and then underneath it said, "It's a million little ones." Isn't that cute?
Uh-huh. So this is that stitch on the top one where that top piece decided to go on a little vacation. So that's why I taped that corner so that it would stay where it was supposed to. And look at that.
Just like it's supposed to.
Good little piece of fabric.
I know.
Pat it on its back if it had one, but it doesn't. So I'm going to cut it off instead. Show it how I really feel. All right, this is that long,
Really long one.
really long piece. And again, this one's important. You want to make sure that you've got coverage all the way across. So pay attention to those points that you're getting evenly balanced all the way so that you get coverage on both sides of that long piece there. And you'll notice that there's little bits that starts happening as you layer. There's going to be little parts of the corners that don't trim off. And I'm gonna just bring that, oh, sorry. So this is where I'm talking about. This is completely normal. And you're gonna see that on all of these as you're going, no matter what type of folded fabric quilting type that we're doing, you will see those. Don't worry about them, just leave them there.
Right.
There's nothing wrong. That's just part of the gig. Sorry, I got ahead of you there.
It's all right. I did not anticipate that. Change of plans. She rerouted.
I did reroute just a bit there. All right, so last stitch here. One more trim. Sometimes I hear that in my sleep. What about you? Do 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 do. Do 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 do.
There's really nothing like waking up in the morning having.
Feeling like you've been at work all night?
Yes.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You're like, oh my God.
It never happens to me.
Like I didn't leave.
I don't know what you speak of. All right, last piece placed. We're gonna tack that little guy down. All right, gonna press that open, and then there'll be a squaring stitch that keeps those all together. I opted to not do my nails last night. Sorry, guys.
Mine are not doing so great either.
I got all the color off except for that one little bit.
There's always one, right?
And then I said, you want to get that corner?
The fabric doesn't move as much when there's batting,
Batting
underneath.
underneath.
Yeah.
You know, it behaves a little better. All right, so far it really looks just like what we did up top. The difference was we had that squaring stitch for the batting underneath first, and then the difference will be the
Now.
beginning and then now.
Yes.
So we just have one more color, which is going to be the quilting stitch, which goes on top of everything here.
Yep.
So
Kathy says she's seen some information about changing the embroidery bobbin to a sewing bobbin before you sew the last stitch around the block. So if you can use sewing thread when you're doing this instead of embroidery thread, while you're putting the entire block together, I think that you will see an advantage. However, I did struggle with that a little bit. The bigger blocks worked much better than the smaller blocks did for me when I was using regular sewing thread. And as for the last stitch on this, to me that one isn't really worth it, because honestly, I'm gonna trim the blocks and I'm gonna re-stitch them anyways. So that in this block, that last one is really just kind of a cutting guideline for us. It's not doing anything at all.
Nope.
But keep in mind that OESD, Anita Good Design, Kimberbell, everybody does their piecing in the hoop
slightly different.
just a little bit different. And that may not be the case for every block. But so far for the Kimberbell blocks that we have done pieced in the hoop. So I don't think that any of it is going to matter at all.
Really interesting quilting.
It is a very interesting quilt design when it is finished. And so that is it. That is how you would do a block that was pre-quilted, or it's not really quilt as you go because there's no backing
Right.
to it, but a block by block quilted piece.
Yep.
And then we have some samples that we can show you underneath over here of different styles.
So these are basically what we just did.
There's 4 of those.
And depending upon, of course, now I have this pad here and it's not helpful. Let's scooch it over a little bit more.
Yep.
All right. Depending on the direction you decide is really going to determine your look with the same thing. You can really have, you know, quite a bit of variance with the same fabric, with the same stitch out, just how you decide to sew them together.
Exactly. Where you put your fabric pieces and the direction that you turn them will all make a big, here is the big Christmas version that we did.
So this is with the Christmas fabrics.
Can we zoom out at all?
Don't know. Oop, wrong way. That's definitely not out.
There we go. That's a little better.
All right. So we've got some beautiful fabrics here. I absolutely love these. So, and then there is an additional white background version of this outside border that we had in there for the backing. And so you've got some beautiful colors. I like the classic, a little bit more rustic instead of, it's not an in-your-face.
No.
Which is, I think, beautiful. So I like the color scheme in these.
And this block was put together
Partially embroidered?
Yeah, so 2 of the blocks are embroidered and 2 of the blocks are pieced. So I purposely did that so that you could see that when you look at the block instructions for doing traditional piecing, it will look like it will be super noticeable how we put it together, but it really isn't. So you would probably have a really difficult time figuring out which ones had seams in varying places.
Right.
Because it really does go together pretty well. So there are so many different ways and variations that you can put your fabric pieces together, that you can do so many different things, you know, even just changing. So all I did here was I copied the fabric placement that Kimberbell had suggested. Right. But if you know, they're basically fabric, yeah, they're fat quarters in there. So
yep, you can swap to be what you would like. And then of course, if you're trying to expand and you pick up our pack, you can swap individual pieces. So you'll have plenty of this darker blue. You can swap in, you know, we've got a piece that's going to sub in for this, and we've got a piece that's going to sub in. So you can mix and match and then have them all look very similar, but have just a little bit of variance. So you can make that out much larger to be whatever it is that you are looking for it to go into. So lots of fun, but you know, just your angles will
and
give
if you turn them all, if you turn them all like going in this direction,
right?
So you have kind of like a really fun pattern as well. So it's like baskets.
Yep.
But yeah, just changing the direction of them.
It's very different looks. So you can stitch them all out and then lay them down and go, now what do I want?
Yeah, you could make alternating
a puzzle out
blocks.
of it, you know, if you would like. It doesn't have to be even what they've recommended. You can make something all on your own as well.
Absolutely.
So, you know, have some fun with it. And if you decided to go with just the digital files and the colors that we picked or Kimberbell picked aren't for you, you know, stash it, have some fun. You don't need a ton of those two. So I think that what we've picked is pretty fun so far, but you know, there's certainly lots of options.
Mindy is asking, where is the seam allowance? Maybe flip one of those blocks over so she can see. The seam allowances are there.
The quilted pieces really show it. So, you know, when you have that, it is literally the outside, this colored piece here is really that 1/4 inch there of the solid, that is your seam allowance. And so it literally is the outside 1/4 inch. And when I first saw the quilt pattern and I'm like, it goes into the seam, I was like, well, that's weird. Where's the seam? You know, I looked at that too. It literally is that is part of the seam. So that is going in there.
But it does
And then
blend
over
it.
here, you have the meet up on this side from the piece that's next to it. So it's literally built into the blocks. When you go to trim, you can see that you have all of that right there. So that squaring stitch is your trim line, whether it be on the quilted or unquilted piece. That outside squaring stitch is your trim line, and that includes your seam allowance. So it's all built in, and it is pretty much all done for you. I mean, it literally is, and they give you a lot of options. So if it does nothing else, it will get your mind going of, hey, I could do this. Even if you decide you don't want to do one that specifically the way they suggest, it will get your mind moving and starting to think about what your options can be.
Yeah.
So the last thing that we have to share with you real quick is there is some, what you need?
Something to get the foot off. I can't.
Will this work?
Probably.
can't muscle that
There
off?
we go. No, I couldn't grab it. So we wanted to show you how to do this in a traditional pieced pattern. So,
Which, if you purchase one of our 2 packs, the sewing instructions for that will be included. It'll be a download that is available for that you can then just print out and use. Or you can purchase just that sewing pattern separately if you would like to know how to do this particular setup block to do by traditional piecing.
yep.
So,
And traditionally for this block, we did just half square triangles. So if you're not sure what a half square triangle is, let's go over to this camera here. All right. And so this is what a half square triangle is. It is basically 2 squares that you sewed together and then cut apart, and it creates basically 2 triangles. So what you're going to do is you're going to start with your square, and you are going to draw a line down the center. All right. So, and there are 100 different ways to do this.
no doubt.
This is the easiest way. Okay, so you draw that line down the center.
From corner to corner.
From corner to corner. You are not going to see this. That you're basically going to trim right through that after you're done sewing. And then you are going to come over to your sewing machine, and you are going to use regular sewing thread and regular thread in your bobbin. I have embroidery thread in the machine and embroidery thread in the bobbin, but it's not going to matter.
Ignore that.
Yeah, just ignore that. I wouldn't normally do that. And what we are going to do is we are going to sew 1/4 of an inch away from this line on both sides. So I'm going into the machine here, and I am tapping the quilting stitch, which happens to be Q02. So it is the quilting stitch to the right. And what I am going to do is I'm going to have the foot of the machine ride right along this line. And I'm going to sew down one side.
You can move over if you need to. I'm
Okay.
out of your way.
There's no foot pedal here, so let's try not to take off like a crazy man,
Well, you wouldn't be a crazy man, you'd be a crazy chick.
right?
Freaky.
Freaky.
Funky.
Okay.
Funky?
Funky.
What would it be? Pick one.
All right, so we're just sewing straight down. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side.
So 1 line drawn from corner to corner, and then a 1/4 inch seam allowance on each side. So 1 line, 2 seams, a 1/4 inch on either side of that line.
And this is going to create 2 blocks. Okay, so now you just
So sorry. Excuse
your
me.
fancy scissors, and you cut right down the center on that line. Okay, and then you have your first block. Okay, so where's one of those blocks?
They're right.
Mm,
Oh, I'm sorry.
One of these. Oh, there we go. So here is this, right? And this is this piece right here. And so then what we would do is when I place this over here, it's a little bit easier to see how this works. So then what we have is we have another square over here, and we have another square over here, and then we have a square over here. And that's really what's going to make up your sewn block. So on this one, if we look at the back, you will be able to see here's a block, here's a block, here's a block, and here's a block. And by doing this piece, this piece, and this piece the same color, you basically create that stripe that you had on the other side. So that's how easy it would be to duplicate this particular block on your sewing machine. So
Just like that.
Just like that. So the advantage of sewing some of the blocks is that you would be able to control the direction of your seam allowance. When you're doing this in the embroidery module, you have no control over your seam allowance.
Not even a
you
little bit.
have to go in the direction that the pattern was written. So when you go to sew some of your pieces together, you might have a little bit of bulk in different places. And sometimes you can twist your block around a little bit to make concessions for that. But if you're trying to do a particular pattern, that is much harder to do. So when you're sewing it yourself, you can control your seam allowance a little bit. So you can push that in the opposite direction.
Yep.
If you don't have an embroidery machine, then you can
still
do
have
that.
fun and play with us.
Absolutely. But if you have some excess triangle pieces that are left over, you could sew those together and you might come up with some fun creations of different block sizes. The written instructions for how to create the blocks come in 2, 4, 6, and 8-inch block pieces. It's $4.95. If you just want the pattern, there is a link on our website. It gives you the cutting instructions. It gives you the sizes. It tells you the placement order in order to duplicate this particular block. And then your trim sizes for all of those different sizes. And then it is just a direct digital download. But if you do purchase one of our fabric bundles, we are gifting that to you with the bundle. It will just be included just in case you don't have an embroidery machine. We wanted you guys to be able to participate. And pending I have the ability to write instructions, I plan to continue.
Try to do that for every month, but it will be
month.
dependent upon what the block is.
That's right.
Whether it will be able to be written.
There are some things you can probably do in your embroidery machine that you may not be able to do traditionally pieced without having some fancy or dancy ruler. But speaking of fancy dancy rulers, there are rulers for trimming. I know I moved all of my stuff. If you decide you want to do this or you are working on a bunch of half square triangles, they do make some really fantastic rulers for trimming up. I will be happy to show you how that works. It's called the Tucker trimmer. Some of you guys who've been sewing for a long time, you might already have a variety of those. It's a ruler that's been out for a really long time, but it is really nice.
Got the markings and everything that line up with the lines that are on the block to help you trim to the right size.
Absolutely.
Because just like everything else in quilting, if you're cutting right and your sewing is precise, then everything goes together really great.
It does.
But when you cut wrong,
yes,
all of a sudden it's not as much fun.
Oh, goes crazy. But that is how you can sew the block in 2 different ways.
Yep.
And that's all we have for perfectly pieced.
That is perfectly pieced in
via Kimberbell's version of SnL. Yes. Tomorrow afternoon we have a free live dime event, which coincidentally is about
quilting
in your hoop.
So some fantastic. It's with Ashley. If any of you have taken any of her events, she's fantastic.
Yes.
She's phenomenal. She knows lots of stuff. So she has some really great tips in how to do different things, and she's a lot of fun. And I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it myself.
Yes.
And
tomorrow morning we have our digital dealer, which is 2 projects. So you'll see us a lot.
Absolutely. So hopefully that helps you get an understanding of how the blocks go together, and this month's block in specific. And if you are interested, the links for everything were in the email that said how to do everything today. I actually saw it this week, so I knew
they
it
were
was
also in the description of this, so they'll be in the information part. So that's it.
So it's all there. So have fun, and we'll see you maybe tomorrow and whenever, but next week.
Yeah.
All right, have a good one.
Happy sewing.
Bye.
Bye.